Applied psychometry. What is psychometry? Psychometry is a field in psychology concerned with the theory and technique of psychological measurement. It involves the development, the administration, interpretation of quantitative tests to measure the psychological variables such as intelligence, the personality, and the mental health. What are the key characteristics of a good psychological test? It should be reliable, so reliability. It should be valid, so validity. It should be standardized, so standardization. And it should have various norms, the reference scores to interpret individual scores, and the objectivity, the freedom from examiner's bias. Okay. So, what is the difference between a psychological test and an assessment? A test is a tool used to measure a specific construct like IQ, while assessment is a broader process that integrates multiple sources, that is like tests, interviews, observations, to evaluate an individual comprehensively. So, what are the steps in psychological test construction? First, we need to define the construct. We need to plan the test format. We need to write the item writing. We need to pilot the testing, okay, testing करनी है, and then item को analyze करनी है, so item analysis, then establishing the reliability and validity, then the norms development and the finalization. So these are all the steps in psychological test construction. What is the item analysis in psychometry? It's the process of evaluating the performance of individual test items to ensure that they are valid and reliable. It includes the IDI or the item difficulty index, that is how many got it right, and item discrimination index, that is how well the item distinguishes between high and low scorers. Okay. Now, what is reliability and what are its types? Reliability refers to the consistency of test scores over time or across raters. Types include the test-retest reliability, the inter-rater reliability, the split-half reliability, and the internal consistency, the Cronbach's alpha. Okay? Now, what is validity and what are its different types? Content validity, construct validity, criteria validity, and face validity. These are the different types of validity. So, validity, obviously, we know that the thing, whatever the test performed, should be valid. Okay, the results should be valid. So, the content, it should be valid. It should cover the entire domain of the construct. And construct validity may, how the way we have constructed the test measures the theoretical construct. Okay, and criteria validity, it correlates with external criteria, which includes the predictive and the concurrent validity. Then the face validity appears valid to test takers or subjective. What are the norms in psychometry? The norms are the statistical data that provide a basis for interpreting an individual's test score by comparing it to a representative sample. Example, age, gender, education level. What is standardization in psychological testing? Standardization ensures uniform procedures in test administration and scoring so that results are comparable across test takers. What are the applications of psychometry in clinical settings? Diagnosing the mental disorders, cognitive assessments, the risk assessments for suicide, violence, etc., and neuropsychological functioning. Example, the memory, the attention, etc. How is psychometry applied in organizational settings? The employee selection, the performance appraisal, the career guidance, the leadership assessment, and the team compatibility. So, how we select the employee, the performance appraisal, the career guidance, the leadership assessment, team compatibility. Explain the ethical issues in psychometric testing. Informed consent, confidentiality, appropriate use and interpretation, cultural fairness, avoiding misuse of test results. So, with this, we finish applied psychometry. So, what is cognitive processes? Cognitive psychology is a scientific study of mental processes such as perception, memory, attention, the language, the problem solving, and decision making. It explores how people acquire, they store, and use information when required. So, this is all about cognitive psychology. And what are the different major approaches that influence the development of cognitive psychology? The structuralism, the functionalism, the behaviorism as a contrast, and the gestalt psychology, the information processing approach, and cognitive neuroscience. So these are all the main approaches, major approaches that influences the development of cognitive psychology. What is the information processing model? It's a framework likening the human mind to a computer. So it's just like we are comparing the human mind to a computer where information is encoded, that is inputting. We are putting in the information input into the computer, and then the messages are stored or processed and retrieved. The output is given for use. It typically includes stages like attention, perception, memory, and decision making. So we have attention, then we are perceiving, then we are keeping it as memory, and then we use it for decision making. So what is attention? What are its types? Attention is a process of selectively focusing on certain stimuli while ignoring others. Their types include the selective attention, the divided attention, the sustained attention, and executive attention. The major theories of attention are Broadbent's filter theory, Treshman's attenuation theory, the Deutsch and Dirichlet selection theory. So each line about each theory. Broadbent's filter theory is the early selection model where information is filtered before processing. Treshman's attenuation theory में unattended information is not completely blocked but weakened. Deutsch and Dirichlet selection theory, all the information is processed but response selection happens later. So that is the Dirichlet selection theory. Now what is perception? How is it different from sensation? Sensation is the raw data we receive by sense organs, and perception is the brain's interpretation and organization of those sensations into the meaningful experiences. Now, explain the Gestalt principles of perceptual organization: the law of proximity, the law of similarity, the law of continuity, the law of closure, and the law of figure ground. What are the stages of memory? Encoding, getting information into memory; storage, keeping it over time; retrieval, accessing it when needed. Okay. So describe Atkinson and Shiffrin's model memory, also known as the multi-store model. It includes the sensory memory, the short-term memory or the STM, and the long-term memory or the LTM. What is working memory? A working memory or Baddeley-Hitch model is a limited capacity system for temporary storage and manipulation of information, crucial for reasoning and guidance of decision making. Components: central executive, phonological loop, the visuospatial sketchpad, and the episodic buffer. The differentiates between the declarative and procedural memory will be: in declarative, it's an explicit facts and events or names and dates are memorized, while procedural or implicit may skills and the procedures, example riding a bike, they are stored. What is the relationship between language and thought? Theories include The linguistic relativity or the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the language influences thought, cognitive universalism, thought influences language. So भाषा हमारे थिंकिंग को थॉट फ्लो को इन्फ्लुएंस करता है, दैट इज लिंग्विस्टिक रिलेटिविटी, while the thinking influences our bhasha or the language. So that is cognitive universalism. So what are the stages of language development? Cooing 6 to 8 weeks, babbling 4 to 6 months, one word stage till 1 year, 12 months, and two word stage till 1.5 year to 2 years, that is 18 months to 24 months, and telegraphic speech above that. So differentiate between phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics. Phonology is the sounds of a language. Morphology is the smallest units of meaning. Syntax means rules for sentence structure, and semantics means meaning of words and sentences. What is problem solving? What are the common strategies? Problem solving involves identifying a problem and finding a solution. Strategies, trial and error, algorithms, heuristics, example means and analysis, insight. What are the common barriers to effective problem solving? Functional fixedness, mental set, confirmation bias, irrelevant information. Explain the dual process theory of thinking. Fast, intuitive, emotional, heuristics based. System 2 is slow, analytical, logical, rule based. What is decision making? What biases does it affect it? Decision making is the cognitive process of choosing between alternatives. Common biases are anchoring bias, availability heuristic, representativeness heuristic, and overconfidence. So with this, we complete the chapter on what is neuropsychology. Neuropsychology is a study of how brain structure and functions cognitive processes. It bridges the neurology and psychology to assess and treat individuals with injury, the brain injury or neurological conditions. What are the differences between clinical and experimental neuropsychology? Clinical neuropsychology, it assesses and treats the cognitive dysfunction due to brain injury or disease, while experimental neuropsychology studies the normal brain behavior relationships using scientific methods and experiments. What is the historical development of neuropsychology? The phrenology, Gall, the early theory linking bumps on skull to mental traits. Then you have Broca's area, that is the linked speech production to left frontal lobe. Then you have the Wernicke's area, it's the linked language comprehension to temporal lobe. And advances in neuroimaging and cognitive neuroscience shaped modern neuropsychology. What are the major divisions of the nervous system? You have CNS and PNS, that is central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system involves the brain and spinal cord, while peripheral nervous system contains the somatic and the autonomic systems. Autonomic system includes the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. Okay. Now, let me do it very short and very small, easy to understand way. What are the main parts of the brain and their functions? You have FP TOC B. Okay? That is the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, cerebellum, and brainstem. The frontal lobe, it does the planning, the decision making, and the motor control, while the parietal lobe has a sensory integration, spatial processing. The temporal lobe involves in hearing, language, memory, etc. The occipital lobe for vision, and cerebellum for balance and coordination, brainstem the vital functions like breathing, heartbeat, etc. What is the function of the limbic system? The limbic system regulates the emotions, memory, and motivation. The key components are amygdala, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus. Amygdala controls emotions, especially the fear. Hippocampus controls the memory formation. Hypothalamus controls the hormonal control and homeostasis. Now, coming to what is neuropsychological assessment. It is a standardized evaluation of cognitive, emotional, and behavioral functioning based on brain behavior relationships. It's used for diagnosis, treatment planning, and monitoring recovery. So, the names you can commonly used neuropsychological tests are the Bender Visual Motor Gestalt Test, which interprets the visual motor integration, and you have Wisconsin Card Sorting Test for the executive function, and you have Ray Osterrieth Complex Figure Test for memory and visuospatial skills, for Wechsler Memory Scale WMS, that's for the memory evaluation, and Trail Making Test TMT, it's for the attention and task switching. What are the steps in conducting a neuropsychological evaluation? Clinical interview and history, selection of appropriate tests, administration of tests, scoring and interpretation, and report writing and feedback. So, now coming to brain disorders and neuropsychological syndromes. What is aphasia? What are its types? Aphasia is a language disorder due to brain damage. There are various types like Broca's aphasia, that is non-fluent expressive language deficits, and Wernicke's aphasia, that is fluent but meaningless speech. Global aphasia, to severe impairment in all language areas. What is agnosia? Agnosia is the inability to recognize objects, people, sounds, or smells despite normal sensory function. That is visual agnosia, inability to recognize objects visually. Prosopagnosia, prosopagnosia, that is inability to recognize faces. What is apraxia? Apraxia is the inability to carry out learned motor activities despite intact motor and sensory functions. Ideomotor apraxia, difficulty with gestures. Constructional apraxia, difficulty drawing or assembling objects. Differentiates between, what are the differences between Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease? Alzheimer's disease, it's a progressive memory loss and cognitive decline due to degeneration of the cerebral cortex, while Parkinson's disease is a movement disorder caused by the dopamine deficiency in the basal ganglia. It may also include cognitive changes. So, what are the different neuroimaging techniques? CT scan, MRI, fMRI, EEG, and PET scan. CT scan means structural imaging using X-rays. MRI is high resolution structural imaging. fMRI is functional imaging or shows brain activity. EEG measures electrical brain activity, and PET scan shows metabolic activity in the brain. What is the role of neuroimaging in neuropsychology? Neuroimaging helps identify structural and functional abnormalities, localize the brain lesions, and guide the diagnosis and monitor the progress in neurological and psychiatric conditions. What ethical issues are involved in neuropsychological assessment? Informed consent, confidentiality of data, non-discriminatory test use, cultural sensitivity, clear communication of results. What is lateralization of brain function? It refers to the idea that certain cognitive processes are more dominant in one hemisphere that is, language in the left hemisphere, spatial skills in the right. So, that is called lateralization of brain function. Define neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming a new neural connections in response to injury, learning, or experience. So that's really nice. Neuroplasticity, self repair. What is executive dysfunction? It refers to impairments in executive functions like planning, inhibition, flexible thinking, and working memory, usually due to frontal lobe damage. How does neuropsychology contribute to rehabilitation? It aids in identifying the cognitive deficits, in designing the individualized rehabilitation plans, monitoring the recovery, and providing. So, coming to emotions in everyday life. Emotions in everyday life is it comes under the semester 1 of MA Psychology. Here we need to understand what exactly are emotions. Emotions or the bhavnas, they are the complex psychological states that involve three components: the subjective experience, the physiological response, and the behavioral expression. The subjective experience, what we feel, the physiological response, how the body reacts, like heart rate, okay, the behavioral expression, the facial expressions, the tone, etc. What is the difference between emotions, feelings, and moods? Emotions are the intense, the short lived, and usually triggered by a specific event, while feelings are the subjective experience of emotions, and moods are the diffuse, longer lasting affective states without a specific trigger. So, what are the basic emotions according to Paul Ekman? Ekman identified 6 basic emotions that are universally recognized: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, surprise. So, these are the basic emotions according to Paul Ekman. Now, coming to the theories of emotions. Explain the James Lange theory of emotion. This theory suggests that emotions occur as a result of physiological reactions to events. Example, you feel afraid because your heart is racing. What is the Cannon-Bard theory of emotion? The Cannon-Bard theory of emotion says that emotions and physiological responses occur simultaneously and independently. Example, you feel fear and your heart races at the same time. What is this Shasta-Singer two-factor theory? The Shasta-Singer two-factor theory explains emotion as determined by physiological arousal and cognitive labeling. You feel aroused, interpret the situation as dangerous, and then feel fear. Right? Okay. Now, what is the cognitive appraisal theory given by Lazarus? Here, emotions depend on how we interpret or appraise a situation, not just on arousal. It's a primary appraisal assesses if a situation is threatening. Secondary appraisal evaluates coping options. What is the role of amygdala in emotional processing? Amygdala plays a key role in detecting the threats and generating fear and aggression. It processes the emotional memories and triggers appropriate responses. How do emotions vary across cultures? Universality, that is the basic emotions like fear, happiness, they're all recognized across the cultures. Then you get the cultural display rules. They govern how emotions are expressed. Individualistic cultures, example in USA, they encourage emotional expression. collectivistic cultures, example Japan, they may suppress emotions to maintain harmony. Now, what is emotional intelligence? EI. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and use emotions effectively in oneself. That is emotional intelligence. And others, Daniel Goleman's components. Okay, so what are the emotional intelligence components? The Daniel Goleman's components are self awareness, the self regulation, the motivation, the empathy, and the social skills. How do emotions develop across the lifespan? In infancy, they show basic emotions like joy and distress. Toddlers, they develop self conscious emotions like guilt, embarrassment. And in adolescence, they experience more complex emotions and mood swings. And in adults, better emotional regulation with age. What is emotional regulation? Name some strategies. Emotion regulation involves controlling or modifying our emotional responses. The strategies could be cognitive reappraisal, suppression, mindfulness, distraction, and seeking social support. How do emotions affect decision making? Emotions influence the risk taking, the judgments, and the choices. Positive mood, the optimistic risk estimates, and the negative mood, the cautious or the risk averse behavior. So, how are emotions expressed in interpersonal relationships? In interpersonal relationships, we use the non-verbal cues, the facial expressions, the tone, they regulate communication, empathy builds connection, and misreading emotional signals can lead to conflict too. So, explain the role of emotions in the workplace. Influence motivation, productivity, and leadership. Emotional labor, that is managing emotions as part of a job service, and high emotional intelligence, that is better job performance and teamwork. What is alexithymia? It's a condition where individuals have difficulty identifying and expressing their emotions. What is catharsis in emotion? Catharsis is the emotional release that people experience after expressing strong emotions like anger or grief. Define mood contagion. It is a phenomena where people catch others' emotions during social interactions. How does stress affect emotional regulation? The chronic stress impairs the brain's ability, especially the prefrontal cortex, to regulate emotions, leading to mood swings and poor coping. How can mindfulness help in managing emotions? Mindfulness helps people become aware of their emotions non judgmentally, leading to better regulation and reduced reactivity. Thank you. What are the paradigms of psychology?
Paradigms.
Paradigm is a broad theoretical framework that guides how psychological phenomena are understood, researched, and interpreted. It includes assumptions, concepts, and methodologies. Why are paradigms important in psychology? They shape how the problems are defined and studied. They provide a foundation for theories and methods. They help organize the knowledge and direct research. And can you tell me the major paradigms in psychology? The structuralism, the functionalism, the behaviorism, the psychoanalysis, humanistic psychology, the cognitive psychology, biological neuroscientific approach, the evolutionary psychology, and the socio-cultural perspective. These are all the major paradigms in psychology. What is structuralism? Who founded it? It was founded by William Wundt, and advanced by Edward Titchener. It focused on analyzing the basic elements of consciousness through introspection. Tried to break down the mental processes into structures like sensations, images, and feelings. What are the criticisms of structuralism? They are highly subjective, relied on introspection, like yogis and all. Now, ignored the mental processes beyond conscious awareness, lacked practical application. So, these were the criticisms of structuralism. What is functionalism? How does it differ from structuralism? It was founded by William James, functionalism, and it was inspired by Darwin. It focused on the purpose and function of mental processes in adapting to the environment. More practical and holistic than structuralism. What is behaviorism? Who are its key figures? Behaviorism emphasizes observable behavior over internal mental states. It was founded by John B. Watson, developed further by B. F. Skinner, and it uses conditioning or the classical and operant to explain behavior. It rejected introspection and unconscious processes. What is psychoanalysis? It was developed by Sigmund Freud. It focuses on unconscious drives, childhood experiences, and defense mechanisms. The key structures are the id, the ID, the ego, and the superego. It uses techniques like dream analysis and free association. Compare the behaviorism and psychoanalysis. Feature behaviorism and psychoanalysis. Feature, that is the focus. Behavior will be the observable behavior. Psychoanalysis, the unconscious processes. Here, behaviorism, the method is through experiments, conditioning, and but psychoanalysis is through introspection and case studies. While the view of human in behaviorism is mechanistic, passive, while in psychoanalysis the view of human is emotion driven and conflicted. Now, the key theorist in behaviorism is Skinner and Watson, while in psychoanalysis the key theorist is the Freud. What is humanistic psychology? It emerged as a reaction to behaviorism, and psychoanalysis emphasizes the free will, the personal growth, the self-actualization. Key figures are Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow. It focuses on the whole person and his subjective experience. What is the cognitive paradigm? It focuses on mental processes such as memory, thinking, problem solving, language, and it treats the mind like an information processor or a computer metaphor, and you can compare it to a computer. And the key figures are, that is the people who worked on this, as the G.N. Piaget, the Ulrich Neisser, and the George Miller. What is a biological paradigm? It views behavior as a result of biological processes, the genetics, the brain structure, the neurotransmitters, and the hormones. It uses tools like fMRI, EEG, neuropsychology, emphasizes the role of nature over nurture. So these are all the biological paradigm. What is the evolutionary perspective in psychology? It was inspired by Darwin's theory of natural selection. It explains the mental traits as adaptive functions evolved over time. The topics are the mate selection, the aggression, the parenting, the fear responses, etc. Now, what is the socio-cultural paradigm? It emphasizes the influence of culture, the ethnicity, the gender, and society on behavior and mental processes. The key figure, Lev Vygotsky, highlights the role of language, the norms, and environment. Can multiple paradigms be integrated in psychology? Yes, psychology today is multidisciplinary and often uses an eclectic approach by integrating the insights from multiple paradigms to better understand human behavior. What is the biopsychosocial model? An integrated framework that considers biological, psychological, and social factors in understanding the health, the illness, and behavior is a biopsychosocial model. It's widely used in clinical psychology and health psychology. So, what is the difference between a theory and a paradigm? Theory explains specific phenomena using testable principles, while paradigm is a broad framework that guides how theories are developed and applied. So, this is about